it gets like emotional. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
mental more than physical because you're in pain, but you're like, now I can't move, and this was my outlet.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
for stress, motivation, mood, good sleep, anything.
Pushing your body can help build resilience for all aspects of life. In this episode, I sat down with Meg Takacs, who's an ultra marathon runner. She completed a 100-kilometer event, and she shares how endurance training transformed her mindset and ultimately her life. She opens up about the setbacks and the breakthroughs that she had, and talks about how pushing her body to her limits helped her to overcome some of life's biggest challenges. Meg discusses the mental shifts and strategies that keep her and her clients motivated and resilient, and offers valuable insights for literally anyone who's ready to make a change in their life. Welcome to Move Your Mind, where we uncover why you are holding yourself back from getting the life you want and what to do about it. With the help from high-achieving guests and experts in behavioural science, personal development, and the health and wellness space. Join us if you're ready to move out of your own way toward your ideal self. I'm your host, Nick Brax, and I've been working in the health and wellness space for the last 15 years, helping people find direction and gain the courage to take control of their life. My mission is simple: to help you learn everything that I wish I knew, so you can become your ideal self. Lacking guidance, I spent the majority of my youth feeling lost and disempowered, which led to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and substance abuse. Looking back, I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate what I was experiencing. And as a man, I didn't resonate with the emotional language used in traditional therapy. I didn't need to talk about my feelings. I needed tangible solutions to guide me toward building a life I was proud of. If you can relate, then this podcast is for you. In this episode, we discuss how regular exercise builds resilience. If you're ready to take action and build a stronger mindset, then keep listening.
Meg, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast. We finally got here 49 minutes later. We've had a million different tech issues, but we're here.
We're
So
here.
I'm glad that I can chat. It didn't look like we were going to be able to do it. So I'm
Yeah.
happy we actually can go through with it, because it's always hard to find, coordinate times and make it happen. So yeah, appreciate you coming and doing it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate it. So I might just dive straight in. Are you able to, just so our listeners can learn a bit more about you, can you give a bit of a background on yourself, what you're doing, and essentially how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So I ran track in college and I was a journalism major, speech minor. And I got out of school and went into PR, kind of like marketing, but I really miss sports. And I was like, I can just put all the PR and marketing into building my own business. So in Atlanta, I trained people for probably 5 years or so. And then we opened a CrossFit gym at the time. I don't want to date myself, but everyone was like, what's CrossFit? We're going to open
Yeah.
up. So we opened that and it was great. And it kind of introduced me to Olympic barbell lifting, which I found translated to running pretty heavily. So I got really into that. And then 2016 moved to New York, helped start a company, and then kind of branched out on my own, which was scary, but worth it.
Yeah, I love that. And now you're in Colorado doing running your own company, but I love the full circle, I guess. And from the, competing in, you were saying in middle distance running, was it, or in
Yeah, I ran the 800 and the 4x4.
yep.
You know,
Okay.
like anyone in sports, when I was sitting at a desk, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to go to the gym. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't, I love what I learned from, the 9 to 5, but was kind of itching to break into the field on my own and get a little competitive and
Mm.
have some challenges.
Yeah, no, I totally relate. Like growing up, my goal was to be a professional athlete, and I was playing Australian rules football, which I don't know if you would know about. It's like the biggest sport in Australia. Americans don't, get exposed too much to it. But then I ended up getting into middle distance running, and I was doing sort of 1500, 3K, 5K. That was my goal. And when I got injured and couldn't do that anymore, as sort of a young adult, I just had this itch where I'm like, I just can't get that same feeling of that you get from competing in sport, like you don't really get that in the
Yeah.
workplace. And that's like been was a huge frustration for me. And it led to me going and getting into acting and different things and, now doing stuff in fitness and incorporating it. But, I totally relate to what you're saying there, where it's like really hard when you've got that mindset as an athlete and you're trying to transition from it or find, where to go from there.
Yeah, you kind of miss like the thrill of having a challenge. So when you get the email that it's like you met your deadline, you're just kind of like, yay. Exciting to have like, and like you mentioned injuries, that was a big catalyst for me to be like, there's a space in the running industry where there's not like a holistic approach that's like strength training, mobility, injury prevention. So that was kind of the mold that I wanted to break and introduce to people, which was super fun, very hard, but
Yeah.
definitely worth it.
Well, can you tell me a bit more about that process in terms of like the challenges you've had to overcome, I guess? Because a lot of our listeners are either, entrepreneurs or they're looking to do their own thing, or they're just, a lot of it's about self-improvement as well. So it's all about really overcoming those obstacles. How do you deal with, the adversity, challenges? Because I think a lot of us, we want to do different things, but then when we actually try and do it, we realize, wow, there's like a million hurdles to get over and it never ends. And it's very hard to stick to unless we sort of have a plan and we know, you know, have the right mindset to do that. So yeah, interested to hear how you.
Yeah, I think like my best advice would be there's going to be more wrong turns than right. And you just kind of learn to roll with the punches. And I think when I got injured, I tore my meniscus and I was running on the West Side Highway in New
Yep.
York and I felt it and I was like, this is fine. I'm going to keep going. But I could hardly walk. And I think a lot of people that experience injury, it gets like emotional. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
mental more than physical because you're in pain, but you're like, now I can't move. And this was my outlet,
Oh, hundreds.
for stress, motivation, mood, good sleep, anything. But I was like, let me learn from this injury and then teach other people you can come back even better than before. So I think it's a lot of mindset.
Yeah.
Like it's not the end of your road. It's just a different path.
Yes, absolutely. Because that can be really hard. And I found that I might have to give you a call after this to get your services because I found it pretty frustrating as like the last sort of 5, 10 years I've had ongoing knee problems, and then it's mainly been my Achilles, like the last like couple of
Yeah.
years, and I get too lazy to go and do all the stretching and all the different things that you're meant to do. So then I'll like go running occasionally and it's okay for a while, then it flares up again. And I find that so frustrating, but I just like I do other things and I'll go to the gym and everything. But the problem for me is like just I get overwhelmed trying to think on top of everything else I'm doing. I can't be bothered setting the time aside to do all the exercises for it.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what people, it's overwhelming because, the industry is like, especially during COVID, it was like all you need is a pair of shoes. But what people don't understand is it's a repetitive movement. And when
Hmm.
you're a runner, you want to keep going further and further. So you go from 5K, marathons, maybe ultras, and your body is, it takes a little more than just a pair of shoes. Takes
Totally.
weights, PT, apps, coaches, if you really want to invest in it, I think people underestimate how much wear and tear goes into running in general.
You're looking to make a change, to lose weight, to get toned, to gain self confidence, all in just 24 minutes a day, then go no further. You can check out the Move Your Mind community by going to nickbrax.start.page.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess like as we get older, is that, something we need to be more and more aware of? Like what you can sort of, your body can take a lot more when you're younger, but running so hard on your joints and all that kind of thing, is it something that's pretty critical if we want to be doing it, having longevity with it?
Yeah, I mean, I always look at age as it sounds cliche, but it is just kind of a number.
Yeah.
And if you look at the last finisher of the New York Marathon, he was like in his, I don't know, late 70s, 80s, and this was like his 35th marathon.
Wow.
So it's possible, but I think people like when you're young, you feel good. And I think for me, when I tore my meniscus in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm never going to come back from this.
Mm.
But I think the older you get, the wiser you get, and the more conscious you are with your approach. Like, okay, mobility does help. Like my
Yeah.
hips. And then when you start, strength training, taking care of weaknesses, your body kind of opens up this whole new range of motion, power. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I don't think age really factors into it a whole bunch. As long
Yes.
as you have like intrinsic motivation and you take care of your body, outside of that, it kind of works in tandem.
And I guess like for, people like me where it's that overwhelm of not doing those, taking those steps. Would that be like anything? It's like a business. If you're not willing to deal with, the initial discomfort to, build that foundation, you'll never get to the point where you actually see the result. But if you do get there, then you're gonna, there's going to be such long-term reward from doing that if you get over that hump of taking, looking after yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, especially for entrepreneurs, a lot of the obstacles that you're confronted with during building a business is kind of the same as running.
Mm.
Like it's not going to be a short, 6-week plan. If you want to really invest in it, it's going to be more challenges than wins, if anything.
And has that mindset helped you a lot in business? Being an athlete, training, has that having that mental strength, how much has that helped you in your business?
Yeah, what did I used to say? The work ethic you have in your workouts is completely transferable to the work ethic you have in everything else you do.
Hmm.
I think that's why you see a lot of, ultra runners or top marathoners that have businesses. They kind of strive for that finish line with everything.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I think people don't realize that it, exercise, that having the discipline, doing something that's for yourself, it's, for self-improvement, it translates to so many areas of your life. It's more than just the benefit you get from that. And, you see it in all walks of life. You see it, like you're saying, in business people, you see it in these runners that are doing different businesses. You see like someone like The Rock, who, he's up at, I don't know, 3 in the morning or something ridiculous. He trains non-stop. He's in his 50s. He's doing 10 million different things. But it seems like that's really the foundation of like what builds that mindset for him. That sort of, yeah, that foundation.
Yeah, I think it's the discipline that really helps. Like if I work out in the morning, I know the rest of my day is going to be a little more clear to me. I'll be a little
Yeah.
more like, okay, I have to do this, 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 but I don't rely on it totally because working out 24/7 can, burn you out just as much as working 24/7. So there's a fine line between balance and giving it your all 100% of the time.
Yeah. How have you managed to find that balance? Because I know for me, that was my problem when I was competing as an athlete. I got basically addicted to it, and it was for me a way to, didn't have the self-awareness at the time. I was sort of 16 years old, but I would be using it to escape how out of control I felt in life, and the anxiety I felt was the only time I felt free. But it just became literally out of control, 6, 7 hours a day of training and all these sort of things. And I found it so hard it took me a long time to find the balance where now, like, I just get up in the morning, I do my, hour, 45 minutes or an hour in the gym or whatever it is. And that just, is like medication for me. That just is night and day. It's the best, sets up my day. But it took me so long to find that. How did you find that balance?
Yeah, well, I found that by my knee tearing finally. My knee was like, "Hey, we're done,"
Okay.
and I was like, "Got it."
So not
Yeah,
recommended for
same.
anyone listening. Don't wait till you tear your knee or have an injury to
Yeah,
find balance in things.
yeah, and I think that's where you have an opportunity to be like, "Oh, I've experienced whether it's an injury or burnout, just emotional burnout too." Where you're like, okay, let me taper, pick up cross training, whether it's, strength training, barbell, could be yoga. So I've learned that training cycles do matter. And like you
Yeah.
can't be in a training cycle 12 months out of the year. So
Yeah.
which is more exciting because then you're like, okay, I've taken this time to detrain. Maybe I focus on helping other people, clients, work, still do stuff here and there, but it gives you a little more excitement when you ramp up, again for training. So I think it's important that people go through kind of like ebb and flow. And
Mm.
that's what like, when people say the post-marathon blues, that's real because you come off such this high and you're like, oh, I want to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10 minutes after you finish and throw up, do your thing, and you're like, I'm never doing this again. And then you're like, let's do it again, a
Yeah.
couple hours later. So it's kind of, I think the difficult balance is between like constantly chasing that high or that thrill, that finish line, and then, you know, being like, all right, I did what I came to do. Now it's time to think about the next goal. But it's important to take some time off.
To have a break in between. And is that sort of that feeling that you get from, if it's doing a marathon for the example, is as much of that it's having that goal and working towards something and then doing it. It's that whole process, is it, of just the focus, having something that, it's giving you more meaning in life, I guess, because you've got this thing that you're focused on. Because I think what can happen in life, even if we have goals, we're trying to whatever it is we're trying to achieve in our work life or anything else, if it's sort of ambiguous and it's ongoing, it can get depressing because it's like, well, okay, like where's my motivation coming from? Where's the excitement or meaning in this? Because it's so broad. Whereas
Yeah.
and again, this is what I loved about competing in sport. It was very specific. It's like, I'm doing this event on this date. I'm training for it. I'm building up to it. It's, you hone in on that. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think
remember what I was asking you.
like the real passion, it obviously comes from like a set goal. I'm gonna run 26 miles, 6 months from now. But I think for me, road running got really competitive. And it was like, oh, now I have to have these qualifying times if I want to do one of the 7 major marathons. And that for me became like a little too overwhelming. Like I was more focused on pace and like pushing my body, getting a certain time instead of just like doing it because this is what I want to do. So I
Yeah.
think the ultras, I was like, if I can run 26, I can run 60.
Yeah.
That
Why
like
not?
yeah, that put me in the pain cave.
Hang
And
on.
I think
Is that 60 miles or 60 kilometers?
yeah, 60 miles.
Oh my God. So what
I think
do you know what that
the
is in kilometers?
100K.
Okay, so for our Australian listeners, 100 kilometers, that's sickening. That's
Yeah,
like, oh my God.
it was one of those backyard races. So you run 4 miles every hour. So you can run some in like 45 minutes. Some of mine were 30 minutes, something. Others were like 58. And then
Yeah.
it starts again. So you just kind of go until you can't. And I
Fuck.
never wear headphones when I run because I live in Colorado. So I don't know if there's like a bear or like a mountain lion, I would want to know. Or, mountain bikers, you just have to be like totally aware. And I think that was the only time I was on like mile 58 and I was about to finish and I put headphones in and just like sobbed.
Yeah.
And I
I
was like,
don't blame you.
wow, this is, something I never thought I would do. And
It's
it took, what, 16 hours? But
so
there was no like, you don't make this time or there was no pressure. It was
yeah,
all just like, what can you do?
yeah. And does that mindset, I guess, translate? Does that make work easier? Like day-to-day sort of things feel
Yeah.
compared to
After you're like, I was in Maine, uh, throwing up in the woods at 3 a.m. with a headlamp on, like I can do anything. I'm good. I'm all set.
exactly. Yeah. Nothing's
Yeah.
going to compare to the how the
Yeah,
mental
we thought it was
difficulty.
funny. On the way home, we sat in an exit row and they're like, if this plane goes down, can you help? And we're like, yeah, yeah, of course. We'll save the plane. I'll fly it.
Why not? It's that,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds easier than running 100 kilometers.
Yeah, and I think you just like it's more the physical pain kind of goes out the window. And then you're like, oh, now I get to really like get in my head. This is like, any kind of demons or mental obstacles you've had in the past. Once you clear that, you're like, oh, I can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And does a lot of stuff come up through that? I guess through that process, you've got so many different thoughts that you're sort of working through, I guess, through it.
Yeah, I think you're just more so, I felt like really proud. Like, okay, this is something I've coached people to do before, and like I've, done marathons. I know the feeling of when you finish, but something I've never done. It was like a whole new barrier that you break, and you're like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
this. And then I think I took like 2 months off, and then you start itching again to be like, all right. And I think I did that race 3 years in a row. The next year, I ran 30 miles and died. And then the next year, 50. And then I was like, all right, I need a little time off.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people
A lot.
underestimate the amount of time management, like skills that you have to have. Like, I have a 4 hour run. How are you going to fit that in? I think that's one of the hardest parts. And for me, it became like, all right, I can't do this every year.
Like a
I need
four, you're
like,
talking about like just for preparation, like it'll be like today I've got a 4 hour run to work around my workday and everything else
yeah,
I'm,
like I also have a life, but
yeah,
you
which is
know,
like 4 hours of running that's half of a bloody workday, just
yeah,
running.
it actually kind of transferred my mindset to be like, okay, during this run, I know I have these work problems or life problems. I'm going to work through it. When I get home, I'm going to bang it out, get it all done.
So made you
So it's
sort of
kinda
more
like,
efficient, I guess, or
yeah, it's like moving meditation or moving, more conscious thinking. It's just one foot in front of the other.
yeah.
What else get done? I'll have those endorphins, get my work done, and sleep. And tomorrow.
Get up again tomorrow and run another 4 hours.
Yeah.
Um, so that competitive sort of mindset you've had, has that translated into business? Is it similar with that, or is it a different relationship you have with your like that career?
Are you interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are on the same journey as you are? Even though you're the one that needs to do the work, you don't have to go it alone. You can find all of the information at nickbrax.start.page.
I think with road running, the competitiveness, like kind of for me, translated to business, where I was like, when I worked for the old company that I helped start, I was like, I have to do my best work. If it's not, like, I feel bad. It's not my best effort. And that became a little much. So with ultras, I was like, I just have to finish. I have to get to my goal, and I'll get there however I get there.
Yeah,
So I think, yeah, it's a little bit different depending on what you train for.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So what keeps you motivated now with everything you're doing? What's sort of the thing driving you forward in your work?
I think it's mostly giving people the gift that I gave myself, being like, hey, let's, put the mind and the body to its absolute brink.
Yeah.
So if I can, help people cross a finish line and that work ethic translates into everything else they do, my job's done.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
I feel like I'm getting emotional. I'm like, don't cry.
that. You can cry.
Like, it's not like so much for me anymore. It's more like, okay, I know this helped me immensely, mentally, physically, career, family, relationships, whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can help push someone else to have that feeling, then that's kind of my focus now.
Well, it's so meaningful. I mean, like that's the thing. You're getting emotional because you know how crucial it's been in your own life, how much of an impact it's had, how much meaning it's given you, what it's helped you overcome. And if you're able to help other people do that, you understand, like intimately what that means to them. So if you can offer that to other people, there's not many more meaningful things you can be doing with your life than helping facilitate that for other people.
Yeah. And I think after a while it gets a little like, oh, I do this, so much for other people. I haven't done a race in God, probably since September last year. But I'm like, I feel kind of more purposeful in stuff that I'm doing that's not for me,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that makes sense.
that does make sense.
Also, it's like,
Cool.
my goal with coming out with my app was to help people avoid stupid nagging injuries like shin splints or plantar fasciitis, IT band syndrome, because that stuff seems like a huge deal, but it's preventable. So it's
Mm.
like if I can train someone from day one, like they'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's that, which I mean goes for sort of anything, I think, in our health and wellness of how can we be sustainable? Because I think, what I've seen is a lot of people will have the motivation or the intention to make these changes, but then you don't stick to it long term and life gets in the way or the motivation's only there for so that will only keep you going for so long if you don't build the habits, if you don't have the accountability and all these different things. Most people won't stick to it, and you need to get over
Yeah,
that hump to it needs to become. I talk about it like it needs to become like brushing your teeth. It's just like what you do, you don't think about it until it can
yeah.
get to that point. It's kind of hard to sustain it long term.
Yeah, it's super hard. And that's what I think people do too much because you're like, oh, I finished this race. Now let me think about my next goal. And I think it's important to take some time off to reflect on what you did, what you want to do next.
Yep.
The intrinsic motivation becomes deeper the more you conquer.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm glad I
What?
could try.
And so I'm super interested. A lot of the work I do is in the mental health space. How much of a correlation do you think there is between your mindset, your mental health, and exercise?
A huge one. And this, I talk about it in like audio guided runs. I had a really good friend pass away in 2015 or 2016. And that for me, running was like, okay, let me cope with, feelings. And
Hmm.
that
I'm
was kind
so
of my
sorry to
outlet.
hear. So sorry to hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And that
But
was a big
it
outlet.
was also like a huge motivating factor. And the
Hmm.
funny thing, I was like, if I told her I ran 60 miles, she'd be like, why? Why would you ever do that?
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of, I feel like there's life events that happen that, draw a lot of people to distance running in general, whether it's marathons, ultras. There's always some kind of huge thing in your life
Yeah,
that
100%.
happens. And you're like, okay, let me, do something I've never done or have the
Yeah.
discipline to get up every day, work on myself so I can be, you know, better for people around me.
100%. And I think we don't realize what our potential is, how far we can push ourselves, how much we can actually withstand until we test that. We're really running off stories that we tell ourselves or other people tell us, but until we try and challenge that, we don't realize what we're actually capable of. And I think it can open up that mindset, through, running and what you're talking about to be like, wow, well, okay. I didn't know I could run 100 kilometers. Maybe I can do this other thing that I didn't think I could do as well.
Yeah, and like the thing about running is it's so exciting, but I've learned that, improving mobility or lifting, having a PR and a back squat, like that can kind of be not as big of a deal. Like it doesn't feel as good, but it's still progress.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be just running. Running's like a huge feat. Like when you're running 16 plus hours and a
Yeah,
barbell squat takes 5 seconds, but it's still, an accomplishment, something you didn't know you could do. And I think proving that to yourself is one of the best things you can get out of fitness in general.
definitely. 100%. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, love everything you're talking about here and love what you're doing. Where can our listeners go if they want to learn more about what you're doing? If they're like me and they might need your help to manage or hopefully prevent injuries with running, where can they go?
Yeah, so movementandmiles.com is the app sign up, but it's in Google Play, the App Store, and then my Instagram is Meg_Takacs.
Great. Well, that we'll have that in the show notes. So anyone listening, check it out.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at NickBrax. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Anyway, I finish every episode is quick fire, sort of 5 questions. So you can do
Yeah.
extremely rapid answers to this. Um,
Okay.
um, even though they're quite deep, the questions. But anyway,
Oh no.
um, the first one is, what do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
A lack of resources. Health insurance often does not cover it. So I think it's mostly money and being able to find the right, whether it's therapist, doctor, psychiatrist for you. Health
Yeah,
insurance, biggest burden
that's a
here
big
in
one.
the US.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
What's your personal definition of happiness?
Ooh, I think it has to come from within and the relationships and the work you do because of that.
Yep, love that. What would be one piece of advice you'd give to your 18-year-old self?
Start strength training if you're a runner.
Yep,
Like
love it. Um,
also that nothing really pans out how you think it's going to pan out, and that's totally fine.
so true. What's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Ooh, I think living in our house in Ohio. I don't know why I loved it. We had like a ravine. I used to play soccer. Just like I feel like when you're young, you smell things differently or you like hear things differently. So I think maybe just being young would be something I would request to go back to
Love that.
a little bit.
Final question. What are you most proud of?
I think now that I'm old enough to reflect, it's not my own personal accomplishments, but what I've learned from those to help teach other people how to become more resilient mentally and physically.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing, I guess, like that's you can build on that forever if it's sort of about your own journey. And I think a lot of professional athletes face that where they'll have their career and it's pretty short-lived. And then, what do you do after? It's like a tricky thing. So I think it's a super important thing.
Yeah, and it's hard when you come out of something like my fiance came out of the military and it's like you feel a little lost. It's like finishing a race. Like, what do I do now? It's such a high, but you're like, you know, you learn work ethic, dedication, time management, resilience. There's too many qualities to name.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all of this, and I'm sure our listeners will take a huge amount out of it. And again, anyone listening, go into the show notes and check out all the links. But yeah, Meg, thank you so much for making the time and putting up with all of the technical back and forth we've had to go through.
It's okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Meg Takacs, for joining me today and offering your insights. And thank you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode and any suggestions for topics you'd like to hear about. Feel free to leave a comment or just send a DM. Your feedback's always appreciated. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.